The Second Crusade, 1148 AD battle for Damascus, when heaven ignored the faithful, a march of kings, a promise of deliverance, and a city ringed with orchards where prayers met silence. Summer heat hangs over Syria. Dust curls off armored columns. Two crowned rulers, Louis of France and Conrad of Germany, ride toward Damascus, hearts hammered by prophecy and pride. The city glitters behind a living wall of fruit trees and canals. Water sings where steel will soon answer. Here's the jolt most never hear in school. Despite the might of two royal armies and the blessing of the cross, the entire siege collapses in less than 5 days. Not from lack of faith, from something colder. A council tent breathes like a lung in the night. Voices lower, maps wrinkle. A decision quiet, swift, disastrous will move the army from advantage to ruin. Orchards that sheltered them will become a maze of fear. Reinforcements gather in the dark, and the men who arrived as saviors begin to taste ash. The gates of Damascus stay shut. The prayers grow hoarse. The ground itself seems to tilt against them. One question holds like a blade at the throat of history. Who shifted the fate of an entire crusade inside that tent, and why? Do not look away. That answer waits, just out of reach, beyond the first charge. The orchard wall of water and steel morning rises over Syria like a burning coin. The crusading host shimmers in heat, a sea of banners and armor stretching across the hills west of Damascus. From a distance, the city appears to float on green like gardens upon gardens. Thousands of trees, every branch heavy with fruit and promise. The men whisper that this is paradise itself, the reward before the reward. But paradise has teeth. Louis of France rides beside his German ally, Conrad, their eyes fixed on the shimmering belt of orchards that shield the city. Beneath the calm, suspicion flows. They've lost too many. Arty, disease, ambush, thirst. Now they are chasing redemption through the dust. The priests promised that this conquest will restore faith to a Europe bruised by failure. Yet somewhere deep within, both kings sense a silence and unease in heaven's response. When the first trumpets call, the Crusaders surge into the orchards like a flood. Steel meets shadow. Arrows fall through fig leaves. The air thickens with sap, sweat, and iron. For a moment, victory seems certain. The walls of Damascus, close enough to see archers shifting on their towers, appear within reach. The Crusaders seize irrigation canals and fruit groves, life-giving veins meant to feed the city. Water splashes over mail and sandals. Men laugh, drunk on conquest and sunlight. They believe they have taken the hand of God once more. But the orchards have their own will. The narrow paths twist, split, and close again. The branches hide the enemy. Each canal becomes a mirror, flashing light into eyes, revealing movement where there should be none. From behind the thick leaves come voices in Arabic, low, deliberate, unhurried. The defenders of Damascus know every step of this ground. A cry cuts the noise. Arrows from unseen angles. Knights fall in confusion. Horses rear. The channels turn red. The air fills with the hiss of bolts and the smell of broken fruit. Yet the kings push forward, believing the city will fall if they can only reach the walls before night. They do not see what the locals see, that they are now surrounded by an invisible circle of water and trees. A labyrinth built by nature and perfected by men. By dusk, the Crusaders hold their ground near Daria, exhausted but triumphant. Fires flicker through the groves. Between the trees, the glow of Damascus glistens like distant gold. They have taken the outer belt of paradise, or so they think. That night, as the fires die, a strange quiet spreads. Scouts report movements on the far edge of the gardens, unseen forces gathering in the dark. The city that seemed ready to break has not broken. Inside its walls, every household works through the night. Wells are fortified, gates reinforced, and soldiers rotate without rest. The people of Damascus are not praying for deliverance. They are preparing to outlast their conquerors. In the Crusader camp, the kings summon their council. Torches flare inside a large tent, heavy with sweat and candle smoke. The commanders argue whether to continue the assault from the orchards or shift position to the north where the ground is open. The local barons of Jerusalem warn them. These gardens are not a gift, but a trap. Water can vanish overnight, and the channels they control can be turned off at the city's whim. Louis listens in silence. Conrad frowns. Between them, the faint scratch of a quill on parchment, the sound of a new plan forming. The meeting ends with no cheer, only the rustle of armor and the murmur of doubt. When dawn breaks, the decision is revealed. The entire host will move north, away from the fertile orchards, to attack from higher ground. The knights obey, confused but loyal. They leave behind shade, fruit, and water for open dust and burning wind. The men whisper that perhaps a vision guided this command. Others mutter darker thoughts, of bribery, of betrayal, of lords who sold the plan before it began. By midday, the shift becomes chaos. Supply lines stretch thin. Horses stumble on cracked soil. The sun turns merciless, reflecting off shields like fire. From the walls of Damascus, the defenders watch the foreign army wander into the heat, their banners drooping, their ranks breaking under thirst. And then, as if on cue, the water from the captured canals runs dry. The Crusaders stop, stunned. Every channel that fed them is suddenly still. The orchards behind them seem to close their green jaws. It dawns on them they have abandoned life for death, advantage for illusion. Louis stares at the horizon, jaw tight. Conrad's eyes darken. No one speaks the thought aloud, but it moves through every tent like smoke. Someone among them has made this happen. That night, the air is heavy with murmurs. Priests pray without conviction. Soldiers clean their weapons in silence. From the city, drums echo faintly, a heartbeat through the dark. And beyond the lines, unseen scouts slip through the groves, carrying messages north to Nur al-Din, son of Zengi, the rising power who watches from afar. Reinforcements begin to stir in his camp. Inside the Crusader tent, Louis calls for his advisors again. The mood is brittle. Each man's loyalty feels like a mask. The voices grow sharp. Conrad argues that to retreat now is to abandon God's will. Others insist that to stay is suicide. Maps are torn, tempers flare, and when silence falls, it feels like defeat already written. Somewhere beyond the flickering tent light, a soldier hears movement, metal scraping stone. Footsteps, quick and close. He raises his torch, sees nothing, but the next morning, a patrol finds the body of a messenger in the reeds. Throat cut, seal of Jerusalem, missing. The wind changes. The scent of the orchards, no longer sweet but sour, fermented. Ravens circle. The men begin to speak of omens, of heaven's silence turning from indifference to warning. Still, Louis gives the order to press on. Pride must carry what faith cannot. They form up before dawn, armor clattering like chains. The walls of Damascus glow faintly under the first light. Calm, waiting. As they march, the dust thickens until it feels like the world is closing in. From the towers, defenders raise banners of deep green, the color of renewal. Arrows whistle again faster, more precise. The Crusaders realize the city has grown stronger, not weaker. Reinforcements have arrived. By afternoon, the assault collapses against the heat and confusion. Men fall by the dozens. Water gone, morale draining faster than blood. Still, Louis rides forward through the storm of arrows, his face streaked with sweat and dust. His faith is iron, but even iron rusts under such silence. When he returns to camp, Conrad is gone. Rumors spread, some say he was wounded, others that he refused to fight under a cursed banner. The alliance cracks quietly at first, like glass under pressure. That night, lightning flashes over the desert. No rain follows. The army shivers in the dry wind. Louis walks alone, beyond the campfires, eyes on the distant glow of Damascus. He whispers not to heaven, but to himself. If the faithful are abandoned, who, then, is chosen? The orchards beyond him rustle, though there is no breeze. Somewhere within their shadows, unseen watchers move again, silent, patient, precise. The king feels it in his bones. The battle has barely begun, but destiny has already shifted, and as he turns back toward his camp, a single horn sounds in the distance, not theirs. A sound low and long, echoing across the gardens like an answer from the dark. The night of the council wind moves through the tents like a whisper of something watching. The moon hangs low over the Crusader camp, its light silvering the broken shields and dying fires. Thousands sleep uneasily, clutching weapons instead of prayers. Some dream of home, others dream of water. None dream of victory anymore. Louis sits in his tent alone. His armor lies scattered like a confession. Maps litter the table, soaked with sweat, dust, and candle wax. The decision to move north still haunts him. He hears it replay in every silence, the rustle of the council, the uncertain voices, the soft assent of men who no longer believed. He wonders if heaven truly spoke through them that night, or if something else did. Outside, the murmur of soldiers mixes with the croak of frogs along the empty canals. Once living streams now lie still as polished glass. Louis steps out, breathing the heat that refuses to fade, and sees the camp stretched thin across the wasteland, tired banners, restless horses, men with hollow eyes. And beyond, Damascus gleams. It hasn't slept. Inside the walls, torches burn steady. Arrows of light trace the parapets. The city waits like a lion in tall grass, silent, ready. A voice interrupts the king's thoughts. It's Thierry of Flanders, his face pale beneath the flicker. He brings word of a new council. The barons of Jerusalem have called it, claiming to hold vital intelligence. Louis nods, weary but alert, and follows. The council tent glows from within, alive with tension. The air is thick, men packed shoulder to shoulder, armor creaking, each face lined with distrust. Conrad sits opposite Louis, his gaze hard, his pride unyielding. Between them lies a map of the city, a blur of ink and sweat. The Baron of Jerusalem speaks first. He claims the northern approach is hopeless, the ground too hard, the wells poisoned. He urges a retreat not back to Jerusalem, but toward the east, where they might regroup near the desert forts. The proposal hits the tent like thunder. Louis stares at him. Retreat means failure. It means explaining to Christendom that two kings, carrying the cross itself, could not breach the walls of one city. But the Baron insists. He speaks of ambushes forming in the north, of Muslim reinforcements closing from Homs and Aleppo. His words sound too practiced, too certain. A few knights exchange glances. Some whisper that gold from Damascus has already crossed the lines. Others say the baron's wife and children live within reach of the sultan's men. Louis watches the man's hands. They tremble slightly, not from fear, but from something heavier. Conrad rises, slamming a gauntlet onto the table. His voice cracks through the tent, fierce and proud. If we retreat now, we invite the laughter of every enemy of the faith. He glares at Louis. France may turn its back. Germany will not. But words slice deeper than they sound. For a heartbeat, no one breathes. Louis feels the eyes of every commander upon him, weighing his resolve against the dying morale of his men. His pride battles his doubt. Then the sound comes, a faint metallic scrape at the tent's edge. Every head turns. A guard lifts the flap, revealing a messenger covered in dust, his horse still breathing hard outside. He kneels, presents a torn standard. It bears the mark of Nur al-Din. The message is simple. Translated aloud, the sons of Zengi ride before dawn. A shiver runs through the tent. Reinforcements. The defenders of Damascus will double by sunrise. The Crusaders have one night before the horizon fills with enemy banners. The council fractures into noise, protests, prayers. Louis feels his control slipping like sand through his fingers. Conrad's fury turns on him, accusing, desperate. Their alliance, so loudly forged in Europe, now burns to ash under the Syrian moon. Amid the uproar, the baron slips away. No one sees him mount his horse and vanish into the dark. But one young squire does, and follows at a distance, curiosity stronger than fear. He tracks the baron through the silent orchards, past the dead canals, until the man halts beside a low wall. There, by the glow of a single lantern, he meets a cloaked figure. Voices whisper in Arabic. The boy's heart hammers as he sees silver pass between hands. The baron bows slightly before riding back toward camp. The cloaked man watches until he disappears, then melts into the night toward Damascus. The squire runs stumbling over roots and stones, reaching the camp breathless and bleeding. He bursts into Louis's tent, words tumbling out. At first, no one believes him. Then Louis demands proof. The boy opens his hand. Inside lies the baron's seal, dropped during the exchange. The tent falls silent. Even the wind stops moving. Louis stares at the small piece of metal, its engraved cross gleaming in candlelight. Betrayal, then, is no longer rumor. But before he can act, horns echo from the eastern horizon. A low, steady sound that rolls across the plain like thunder. The scouts confirm it within minutes. Enemy forces are approaching fast, too many to count. The council dissolves. Orders fly. Torches ignite. Drums begin to pound. Conrad demands an assault before the reinforcements arrive. Louis hesitates, caught between strategy and pride, between salvation and ruin. Then, a messenger returns from the front lines with one final blow. The water from the northern wells, dozens already sick, horses collapsing. The baron's advice was not madness. It was prophecy written by treachery. Louis looks toward Damascus, its walls now alive with flickering fires, its defenders raising cries that ripple through the night. He knows what the dawn will bring. He orders the army to hold positions, to brace for attack. But his voice feels distant, hollow, as though he's speaking through smoke. He turns to Thierry and whispers, "Heaven has not spoken tonight. Men have." When the first light spills over the desert, the horizon glows red, not with sunrise, but with banners. Dust rises in columns. Nur al-Din's vanguard sweeps forward, the air trembling with drums and hoofbeats. The Crusader lines form unevenly, weary, scattered. Conrad mounts his horse, blade lifted high, defiant. Louis does the same, though the doubt in his chest feels heavier than armor. The horns of Damascus answer from within the walls, a cry of defiance and triumph all at once. As the two armies surge toward each other, the earth itself seems to recoil. Steel meets sunlight, and the orchards tremble once more. The kings charge, shouting words meant to summon courage, not faith. In the chaos, Louis glances toward the baron's tent. It's empty. Only the wind moves the flap. And far away, beyond the dust and din, the cloaked figure from the orchard stands atop the city's wall, watching. In his hand gleams the same seal the boy had returned. Another, identical. The first arrows fall like rain. The battle begins, not for victory, but for survival. And as the sky turns white with heat, one truth cuts through the roar of war. The Crusaders are no longer fighting the enemy before them. They are fighting the silence above them. The ground shakes. The dust swallows the banners. And somewhere within that storm, the fate of the Second Crusade begins to break. Damascus turns its face. The storm of war settles into a steady roar. The air over the plain hums with arrows, a dark river flowing through sunlight. Spears clash, horses scream. Men fight not for heaven now, but for the air in their lungs. Louis can barely see through the haze, heat and dust, blurring the living and the dead. He shouts for order, his voice swallowed by the chaos. Conrad charges ahead, armor flashing like molten iron. For an instant, the King of Germany seems unstoppable, cutting through enemy ranks, banners rising in his wake. But for every yard they take, Damascus seems to gain 10 in resolve. On the walls, the defenders stand firm. Arrows pour down with precision born of desperation. Every tower sings with the bowstring's cry. The city, once a distant fortress, now feels alive, breathing, watching, answering. It's as if the stones themselves resist. The Crusaders pushed north, driven by pride and fury, until the orchards vanished behind them and only barren ground remains. There is no shade now, no water, no sound but the hiss of the desert wind. Men stumble, choking on dust. Their armor becomes their prison. The heat turns each breath into fire. Louis looks back and sees the banners of France wavering. He knows what this means. Momentum is dying, and as it fades, so too does faith. He calls for retreat to regroup, but the signal is lost in the din. By the time it reaches the front lines, Conrad's forces are already collapsing inward. A cry rises from the rear, enemy cavalry sweeping from the flanks. Nur al-Din's riders, veiled in black, striking like shadows. The trap has closed. The ground becomes confusion. The orchard paths they abandoned now block any route back. The water channels they once controlled now mock them dry veins underfoot. Everywhere they turn, dust and fire. Louis fights to rally the center, his sword arm heavy, his heart heavier. He sees a soldier fall, clutching a cross-shaped pendant, eyes fixed upward, as if waiting for an answer that will never come. The silence of heaven feels deafening. By noon, the army fractures. Some retreat toward the hills, others scatter into the orchards seeking cover. The unity that crossed continents to reach these gates dissolves in moments, and then sudden stillness. The enemy pulls back. No chase, no slaughter, just withdrawal. A trick of mercy that smells like warning. Louis senses the deception too late. Scouts return, pale-faced. The defenders have reopened the southern gates. More reinforcements, pour in infantry, archers, even citizens bearing weapons. Damascus has turned from prey to predator. That night, the Crusaders fortify what remains of their position. Fires burn low, more for fear than warmth. The men whisper of omens, ravens over the camp, wells turning black. Some claim they hear voices in the orchards, the rustle of unseen feet. Others swear they see lights moving within the city, like eyes watching from behind the walls. Louis prays alone, his words dry in his mouth. He asks not for victory, but for meaning. If faith was not enough, he murmurs, what else remains? No answer, only the sound of distant drums echoing from the city. Slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Conrad enters unannounced, helmet under his arm, his face streaked with dust and fury. We must strike again, he says. Tomorrow, before the desert eats us whole. Louis shakes his head. The men can barely stand. They can stand long enough to die. Conrad snaps. Better that than rot in this heat. There's silence, says the rest. Two kings, bound by faith, divided by fear. Outside, the wind changes. The smell of rain drifts through the air. Yet no clouds gather. It is the scent of irrigation, the city's waters flowing once more. Damascus drinks deep, while the Crusaders parch. A cruel symmetry. At dawn, thunder rolls. Not from the sky, from hooves. The enemy charges again, this time from three sides. The Crusaders are forced against the very orchards they abandoned. The trees that once shielded them now block their escape. Louis fights on foot beside his guard. Mud clinging to his boots. Arrows slicing past. A moment of chaos. His standard-bearer falls. The flag of France sinking into the dirt. Louis grabs it himself, raising it high, though his arms tremble. The sight steadies the line for an instant. Men rally around it. The banner waves, defiant against the sun. Then a horn sounds from the city wall. Long, low final. The gates open wide, not for surrender, but for a flood of warriors. Damascus has emptied its heart onto the field. The Crusaders cannot hold. They fall back through smoke and ruin, dragging the wounded, abandoning siege engines. The orchards burn. Fruit turns to ash. The air smells of iron and sweetness, mixed up by nightfall. The army is broken, but not destroyed. They retreat north again, toward their camp, leaving behind what was once victory's doorstep. Louis sits beneath a torn canopy. Blood on his hands, not all his own. Conrad stands silent nearby, staring at the distant walls, still blazing with torches. Between them hangs an unspoken truth: the war is lost. But before despair settles, a messenger arrives, trembling, dust-caked. He carries a parchment sealed with wax. Not from the enemy, from within. Louis breaks it open. The writing is crude, hurried. It names the baron who betrayed them, but adds one more name. A name Louis knows too well. He reads it twice. His vision blurs. The letter falls from his hand. Conrad catches it before it hits the ground. His eyes scan the words. His face hardens, then empties. He looks at Louis, expression unreadable. If this is true, he says quietly, we are not two kings at war. We are pawns in a game already ended. Louis says nothing. The drums from Damascus begin again. Softer this time, almost mournful. The city celebrates not destruction but endurance. A cold wind sweeps through the camp. Fires flicker. The men sleep uneasily, not knowing what waits for them at dawn. In the distance, lightning flashes once silent, white. The desert holds its breath. And somewhere within that stillness, a rider slips away from the Crusader lines, cloaked and swift, carrying a message toward Damascus. Louis watches him go from the edge of his tent, unseen. His hand tightens around his sword hilt. Though no battle remains tonight, the darkness swallows the rider whole. The king whispers into the silence. his voice thin but steady. Heaven may have ignored us, but hell listens closely. The night answers with nothing. Only the faint echo of hooves fading into the sand and the uneasy promise that the next dawn will not bring peace, but revelation. For days to failure, the fourth dawn comes without birdsong. Smoke drifts low across the fields, clinging to armor, to skin, to breath. The Crusaders stand in ranks that no longer look like an army, only fragments of one. Their banners hang limp, edges burned. Symbols of faith turned into cloth, reminders of exhaustion. Louis mounts his horse in silence. Every movement feels heavier now, as if gravity itself mocks him. Across the plain, Damascus shimmers in the heat. The walls are blackened from fire, but unbroken. From the towers, no arrows fly. No sound but wind and memory. It feels like the calm after defeat, yet somehow, the battle is not done. Rumors sweep through the camp like fever. Some say the enemy has withdrawn to lure them deeper. Others whisper that the kings themselves have made secret terms. Each story births another. Truth becomes smoke visible, untouchable. Conrad rides to Louis's side. His armor is dented, his eyes ringed with red. "We march today," he says, though the words carry no conviction. Louis nods, neither speaks of the parchment, the names written there, or the betrayal that festers between them. To reveal it now would break what's left of the army's will. The host moves slowly, a wounded beast dragging itself toward purpose. They shift their camp closer to the open ground by the Barada River, hoping to cut the city's water supply and regain their footing. Scouts right ahead. The horizon remains empty for a while, then the wind changes. From the south comes the glint of steel and the rise of banners green, gold, and black. Near Alden's reinforcements, more disciplined, more relentless, sweep forward like a tide that does not tire. The Crusaders brace, shields locking, but the assault does not come. Instead, the enemy halts just beyond bow range, content to watch. Hours stretch into eternity under the sun. The waiting becomes its own form of torment. Louis senses the trap. He feels it in the air, the strange stillness before storms that never break. He gives the order to hold, to dig in, to survive another day. But the men no longer listen as they once did. Discipline phrase. Some drift toward the river in search of water. Others collapse where they stand. That night, thunder again without rain. Lightning flares behind Damascus, painting the city in gold and shadow. From within, the drums begin anew. Faster, louder, until they echo through the bones of every man in the camp. Louis paces the edge of the command tent. Thierry reports that the supplies are nearly gone. The wells they dig fill only with brine. Horses die in silence, and the stench carries through the lines. Yet the king refuses to speak the word retreat. To do so would unravel centuries of faith, promise, and blood. Conrad enters, his face hard with decision. "We end it tomorrow," he says. "One final strike before the enemy closes the ring. If we fall as kings." Louis looks up, the candlelight cutting across his face. "And if we win?" Conrad does not answer. Morning breaks, sharp and merciless. The Crusaders move toward the northern wall, their formation thin, desperate. The air trembles with prayer and steel. For a brief moment, as the horns sound, it feels like purpose again. They advance through the dust. The wall looms ahead, sunlit and silent. No arrows, no movement. It looks abandoned. Hope flickers. The first ranks quicken. 100 yards, 70, 50, and then the ground erupts. Hidden trenches, camouflaged by sand, split open. The stakes rise like the teeth of some buried creature. Men fall screaming, impaled or crushed under horses. From the walls, the silence shatters. Arrows rain down. Boiling oil spills like molten night. The illusion breaks. The city was never empty. It was waiting. Louis shouts for withdrawal, but the lines are chaos. Conrad's banner disappears in the smoke. The air fills with the sound of breaking faith, men cursing heaven, shouting names of saints who do not answer. The orchards beyond burn again, their trees twisting into black skeletons. By midday, the Crusader army ceases to exist as an army. It becomes a tide of survivors. Knights drag their wounded brothers through mud that was once dust. The cries of horses mingle with the clang of armor and the hiss of fire. Louis finds Conrad near the river. His sword broken, his arm bleeding. They stand together, staring back at the city they came to conquer. Neither speaks. Words are too small for this kind of ruin. From behind them comes a roar, not of battle, but of something breaking. The siege engines, abandoned in a flame, collapse into themselves. The ground shakes. The air fills with sparks and ash. Louis looks up. Smoke coils toward the sky in the shape of a cross. For the first time, he feels no divine presence in its only silence. Vast and indifferent. That night, the kings meet one last time. No soldiers, no priests, only the sound of the river and the hiss of dying fires. Conrad's voice is a rasp. "We cannot stay." Louis nods. To leave is to admit defeat. To stay, Conrad replies, is to die for pride, not for God. The words hang between them like a blade. Neither man moves to draw it. At dawn, orders go out, quiet ones. No trumpets, no ceremony. The Crusaders will retreat under the veil of early light. They will take only what they can carry and leave the rest to flame. When the first rays touch the plain, the withdrawal begins. Boots in mud, banners folded, the sound of an empire's faith dissolving into the hush of morning. Yet from the walls of Damascus no jeers rise, no pursuit follows. The defenders stand watching, unmoving. The city does not celebrate, it simply endures. Its silence is heavier than victory itself. Halfway through the retreat, Louis turns for one last look. The sun has fully risen now, gilding the domes and towers in light. The same city that seemed heaven's gateway 4 days ago now feels like a mirror reflecting human arrogance. He whispers to himself, almost a prayer, almost a curse. We came for paradise, and found our measure instead. But even as he speaks, movement catches his eye on the southern ridge. A lone rider, swift, deliberate, moving parallel to their retreat. The same figure from nights before. The cloak, the bearing, unmistakable. Louis signals his guard. They pursue, hooves pounding over broken earth. But the rider vanishes into the haze as if the desert itself swallowed him. When they return, one of the soldiers hands Louis a fragment of parchment found where the rider disappeared. Its edges are scorched, its words half burned, but enough remains to chill the blood. It bears the seal of a Christian hand and the message of a Muslim court. The meaning is clear. The betrayal was not bought by gold alone. It was bartered for survival and signed by someone close enough to hear the king's whisper. Louis folds the parchment, eyes fixed on the horizon. The march continues. Silent, broken, endless. Behind them, Damascus stands untouched, its walls gleaming under the sun as if heaven itself had chosen to guard it. And as the last of the Crusaders vanish into the dust, the city's drums begin once more, slow, steady, merciless. Each beat a reminder. Faith had met its limit, and heaven had turned its face away. Far ahead, thunder rolls again, though no storm follows. Something else waits beyond the hills, unseen, shaping the fate of kings. The silence that follows feels alive, ready to speak. Ashes on the banner. The road, away from Damascus, is lined with silence. Not the silence of peace, but of exhaustion, the kind that hums in the bones after defeat. Dust rises behind every step of the retreating army, veiling their shame. The banners that once blazed with color now hang in tatters, heavy with ash and memory. Louis rides at the front, his crown wrapped in cloth, his armor dulled by days of unending sun. He does not speak, and no one dares to speak to him. Behind him, the Crusaders trudge in broken columns, some limping, some carried. They are no longer soldiers of God. They are pilgrims of loss. At intervals, the wind shifts and carries back the faint echo of Damascus bells, perhaps, or laughter. The city stands untouched, watching them leave like a witness to its own miracle. Louis turns once to look back. The walls shimmer in the heat, impossibly distant now, impossibly alive. For a brief moment, he imagines what the chroniclers will write, that heaven tested them and found them wanting. That faith fell not to the sword, but to pride. The words already taste bitter on his tongue. The march continues. Water grows scarce. At night, the campfires are small, scattered like dying stars. Men murmur of home, of wives they may never see again, of sins they cannot confess. And in that murmur, a question spreads quietly from man to man: who betrayed them? Who sold Damascus before the first blow was struck? Conrad rides apart, his wounds bandaged, his pride unhealed. He avoids Louis, avoids the others, staring always eastward as though the answer lies somewhere in the darkness they left behind. The alliance between kings has dissolved into wary silence. They share the same road, but not the same purpose. On the third night of retreat, rain finally comes. It falls hard, cold, relentless, turning the dust into mud and washing the blood from armor. Men lift their faces to the sky as if hoping the storm will cleanse more than dirt. Louis watches the water run red through the trenches, streaking past his boots. He wonders if this is forgiveness or mockery. When morning breaks, a rider approaches from the rear guard, a messenger bearing a sealed scroll. He dismounts before Louis, trembling. "My lord, we found this among the dead, near the ridge." Louis takes the scroll and breaks the wax. The message is short, written in Latin by a hand he recognizes. The treaty stands. The city spared. You were never meant to win. The parchment falls into the mud. Louis's jaw tightens. He asks where it came from. The messenger hesitates, then answers. It bore the mark of the Baron of Jerusalem. The words land like stones in water. Ripples of fury spread through the camp. Soldiers mutter of vengeance, of justice, of turning back. But there is nowhere left to go. The land itself has rejected them. Louis says nothing. He picks up the parchment, folds it once, and burns it over his torch. The flame sputters, then dies in the damp air. Later that day, Conrad approaches him for the first time in days. The German king's eyes are hollow. "They'll remember this," he says quietly. "Every court in Europe, every pulpit, they'll call it a lesson." Louis looks at him. A lesson for whom? Conrad does not answer. He simply rides on. By nightfall, the army reaches the edge of the Anti-Liban mountains. There, beneath the shadow of stone ridges, they make camp for what will be their final night together. The air is thin, colder now. Torches flicker like trembling hands. Louis walks among the men. They avert their eyes, not from disrespect, but from what he represents a faith that promised glory and delivered silence. In the far corner of the camp, he finds Thierry kneeling beside a wounded knight, whispering prayers to quiet for heaven to hear. Louis kneels beside him. "Tell me," he says softly, "do you still believe?" Thierry looks up, rain dripping from his hair. "Yes, my lord, but I no longer know in what." The king nods slowly. It is the most honest answer he has heard in months. As darkness deepens, thunder rolls again, distant and low. Some men mistake it for battle drums. They grip their swords, fearful, though no enemy stirs. Others say it is the sound of heaven closing its gates. Louis sits alone beside the dying fire. The parchment's ashes still cling to his glove. He stares into the coals until they blur, until they look like the burning orchards of Damascus. He hears the echo of the city's drums in his memory, steady, certain, alive. And then he realizes what haunts him most, not the loss, not the betrayal, but the feeling that heaven had never been silent. It had spoken clearly through thirst, through heat, through the folly of men, and they had refused to listen. In the distance, a flare of light flashes across the horizon. For an instant, the mountains glow as if the sun has returned. Shouts rise from the campanic confusion. Scouts rush forward, returning breathless moments later. "It's a signal fire," one says. "From the valley below, someone's calling to us." Louis stands, heart hammering. "From who?" The scout shakes his head. "We don't know, my lord, but it burns in the direction of Damascus." The men gather, staring at the flicker far away. It pulses, then fades, then burns again, rhythmic and deliberate, like a message no one can yet read. Louis turns to Conrad, who has appeared beside him, face lit by the reflection. "Do you think it's them?" Louis asks. Conrad's voice is low. "Or someone who never left." The wind rises, carrying the scent of the desert and something else faint but growing. Louis grips the hilt of his sword. The light in the valley flares, once more, brighter than before, painting the sky with a color too fierce to be natural. Around him, the soldiers whisper prayers, some of fear, some of awe, and as the fire continues to pulse against the horizon, Louis feels the same chill that gripped him before the siege began, the sense that destiny has not yet finished with him, or with Damascus. The night deepens, the signal burns, and somewhere beyond the mountains, unseen hands write the next chapter of faith and betrayal in the language of flame.